is with you in your living room, office, everywhere and anywhere. We provide the company you desire in terms of balanced and up-to-date news, programs and the best of entertainment. Tune in to DSTV channel 251, GoTV channel 91, Freeview UK channel 264, or you can download www.visiontv.co.uk. App for iOS or Android. You can also see us on Facebook and YouTube for quality content on the go. NTA International, Africa's window to the world.
I never get this kind of thing, or I hear it.
Nínú ẹgbẹ́ la wà tá ti gbọ́ formation tíjọba tó ń ṣèrànlọ́wọ́ fáwa télọ̀ wọ́n nítorí COVID-19.
Wọ́n ní kí n korúkọ àtàkáǹtì tí mò ń lò, so mo kọ sílẹ̀, mo mọ́kàn kúrò, mo rò pé ó lè jẹ́rọ́ ni nǹkan tá wá ṣe.
Ju bí ọ̀sẹ̀ bíi mẹ́ta ẹ̀ lọ tí wọ́n gba àkáǹtì nọ́mbà wa tí wọ́n béèrè ọ̀rọ̀ lọ́wọ́ wa yẹn ni wọ́n sẹ́ndì owó sínú àkáǹtì mi.
Ọjọ́ yẹn náà ni mo fi owó kún tí mo dẹ̀ lọ ra fóònù, so láti ìgbà yẹn mi ò ní ìṣòro pẹ̀lú àwọn kọ́sítọ́mà mi mọ́.
Òṣèré tó máa gba 30,000 ẹ̀ tí wọ́n fẹ́ materials pátápátá tó yẹ máa ṣiṣẹ́ family àjẹ ọ̀yàwó.
President Buhari arrives Glasgow for United Nations Climate Change Conference.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo assures of better days ahead for Nigeria.
No matter how bad the situation, the Spirit of God is here.
Attorney General of the Federation distances self from invasion of Justice Odili's house.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss issues in Nigeria's monetary policy.
Monetary policy is one of the several instruments deployed by the Central Bank of Nigeria to address microeconomic challenges such as rising inflation, low economic growth, high unemployment rate, surplus liquidity, and the health of the nation's external reserves.
Now, monetary policy decisions influence, on the one hand, the volume of money in circulation, which has a direct relationship with the level of prices of goods and services. Now, experts also say that a reduction of monetary policy rates seeks to increase money supply, while an increase in the rate seeks to control liquidity in the economy.
Indeed, Kesley, and the CBN at its last Monetary Policy Committee meeting sometime in November retained interest rate at 11.5% and also maintained all key parameters. The Apex Bank earlier had to ban the sale of forex to bureau de change operators after reviewing the free fall of the naira in the money markets.
But there are lingering concerns that in spite of those key decisions, there are still problems with some of the rates. For instance, the exchange rate at the parallel market has hit at least 570 naira to a dollar, even though the central bank warns that that is a small fraction of transactions that occur there. Now, at the official rate, of course, is around about 414 naira to the dollar. Economic experts also argue that the official exchange rate does not appear to reflect the true market situation.
And then comes the e-naira. at a time the CBN still grapples with expanding financial inclusion. The in-era is anchored on blockchain technology and positions Nigeria as the first country in Africa to launch a digital currency.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has explained that the in-era has the prospect of increasing Nigeria's GDP by some $29 billion over the next 10 years. It's also expected to make financial transactions easier for every stratum of society.
So what are the key issues in monetary policy and implication or possible outcomes for the economy? We have assembled a team of experts that will discuss the issue in our conversation segment later. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, the first edition in the month of November 2021. And for the week, I am Juma Yusuf.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Jumai to also welcome you to the program live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As my colleague Jumai indicated, in examining issues in Nigeria's monetary policy, we shall also be taking a look at the relationship between the monetary policy issues and fiscal policies on the one hand, and also monetary policy and trade policies on the other, because they all form part of the ecosystem of seeking to manage the macro economic environment. We also have our complementary segments, including newspaper review and business. For now, here is Nolini Belame, who is already seated with the highlights for the morning news. Good morning, Nolini.
Good morning, Kingsley and Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the news. President Muhammadu Buhari is in Glasgow, Scotland, ahead of the 26th United Nations Conference on Climate Change, COP26. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the president was received on arrival at Glasgow International Airport by Nigeria's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Environment, as well as other senior government officials. During the visit, President Buhari is scheduled to deliver Nigeria's national statement at the high-level segment for heads of state and government at the conference on Tuesday. He is expected to highlight key priorities and action to tackle climate change, as well as progress on the country's transition to low-carbon economy, consistent with achieving the Paris Climate Agreement. The conference, hosted by the United Kingdom in partnership with Italy, will bring parties together to help accelerate action towards the Paris Agreement, as well as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. President Buhari will participate in some sideline events organized by U.S. President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron on environmental sustainability and infrastructural development. Meanwhile, before the departure of the president to Scotland, he met with the national leader of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu. The APC national leader, who described President Buhari as a purposeful, exceptional and caring leader whose only concern is the best for Nigeria, thanked the president for visiting him while recuperating in London.
Spirit and did what an exceptional leader would do to collaboration. That's all. That's what I came for. I'm welcoming him back from the trip from Saudi.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has assured Nigerians of better days ahead. The Vice President was speaking at the 2021 Annual Convention of the King's Palace International Church, Kuje, Abuja.
When we say tomorrow will be better, we know that tomorrow will be better because that is the word of God. But from the beginning of creation, God has determined that even when you begin small or when there is confusion, the end will be great. And your end will be great in the mighty name of the Lord Jesus. And in this land, no matter how bad the situation may be, the Spirit of God is still here. And God is not asleep, He is awake. And God is still going to do wonderful things.
And talking politics, a former president of the Senate, Dr. Iyorchia Ayu, has emerged as the newly elected national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, following the conclusion of the party's 2021 elective national convention held in Abuja.
Of the 2021 PDP convention election, to announce and declare His Excellency Senator Dr. Iyorchia Ayu as duly elected and returned as the national chairman of our great party, the PDP.
Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami says he was not in any way connected with the fabrications and concocted lies linking him to the ensued imbroglio relating to news stories about the search of the residence of Justice Mary Odili as Supreme Court judge. Special Assistant on Media and Public Relations, Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Umar Jibrilu Gwandu, in a statement said that clarification became imperative in view of the media hype and the dimension the story is taking. He notes that as the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, Malami will not stoop too low to be associated with the nasty court process on the strength of which the purported search warrant was procured. The Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, has won the Television Production of the Year award at the 29th edition of the Nigeria Media Merit Award Grand Annual Presentation Program hosted by Kogi State Government. The program was attended by media icons, veteran broadcast journalists, with more than 50 categories of awards won by outstanding media organizations and individuals in the print and electronic broadcast media. That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Jumai after this break. I am Nolin Ebel-Ame. Good morning.
The center is purposely established in order to provide these services that are examinations, medical examinations and investigations that were not provided for in Kano as well as the entire Northwest region. It's equipped with modern technological equipment in terms of radiological services. We have MRI 1.5 Tesla. We have digital X-ray as well as 4D ultrasound equipment. The importance of the center cannot be overemphasized. Just within 1 year, the center attended to thousands and numerous patients as well as medical examinations. NKDC is established in order also to provide these healthcare facilities as a discounted price.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and...
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. It's great value. It protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
The broadcast media ecosystem is dynamic and requires continuous training for practitioners to perform optimally. NTA TV College JOS invites relevant officers to the following specially packaged training programs. Transmitter operation and maintenance, date 1st November to 5th November 2021, 1 week. Photojournalism and photography, date 8th November to 26th November 2021, 3 weeks. Advanced broadcast accounting and auditing, date 22nd November to 3rd December 2021, 2 weeks. The course fee for the 3-week course is 130,000 naira per participant, while the fee for the 2-week course and 1-week engineering course is 100,000 naira only per participant, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-43830 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
Life can be very eventful. We curiously expect things to happen, even when we don't know what. Our human nature makes us like and repost lots of information. Some are unverified, inciting anger and hate. Sometimes innocently, other times the urge to break it first. This, in most cases, has caused destruction in many nations.
You are watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Business News is next with Comfort Ahmadu.
When I learned the POP and the painting and paint production, I was feeling on top of the world. I felt like I've learned everything.
The federal government, through various initiatives and financial intervention, has supported the growth and development of small businesses and empowering the youth in the country. There is advocacy for government to pay more attention to projects that stimulate jobs and institutions to equip youths with the required knowledge and skills for arts and crafts, which have comparative advantage in terms of employment generation.
The small businesses create their own wealth. They add value to the economy. They create jobs, eliminate poverty or reduce poverty. And then the youth will have something to do. Because there is a saying that an idle hand is the devil's workshop. That is why it is necessary for youth to be equipped with skills.
We must put our trust behind the youth. They will not fail Africa. The Africa's youth will make Africa prosper and succeed and become a globally competitive continent. But we have to put the wind behind their sail. And that wind is not words. That wind is money.
They say it is critical for government to sustain investment in construction, housing, power and the oil and gas sectors to mobilize more domestic resources. With Business News, Comfort Ahmadu.
Thank you very much, Comfort, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Next is News Super Review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toby, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Jume. Good morning.
Hope you had a restful weekend.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, Kingsley.
Good to see you.
Good. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning. Let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And just below the masthead, we have how informants, other collaborators fuel banditry. How informants, other collaborators fuel banditry. You find details on page 28 and 29. Domestic airfares skyrocket despite new airlines entry. That's details on page 24. How poor state of Abuja, Kaduna Road aids accidents, kidnapping. That is our headlines in the Daily Trust newspaper with riders. Many lives lost to accidents. Commuters groan, call for speedy work. Payment issues, rains responsible for delay. That's coming from the federal government. And you can see the picture there, showing how bad the roads are. That's the current state of the Abuja-Kaduna Road. Just below the picture story, insecurity, orders cut Nigeria's foreign investment to $875 million, lowest in 5 years. You find details on page 27. At the bottom plate of the Daily Trust newspaper, mixed reactions trail Fashola Sanwo-Olu's monthly rental proposal. You find details on page 32. CBN unveils criteria for supporting 100 local firms. You find details on page 26. CBN unveiled criteria for supporting 100 local firms. Kidnappers abduct Chief Imam, 2 sons in Abuja. Details on page 44. Kinsley.
All right, let's also take a look at the front page of Leadership newspaper. Lift embargo on fossil fuel investment. President Buhari tells Europe and America. Lift embargo on fossil fuel investment. President Buhari tells Europe and America. And the list story has a double-decker headline, 6 days to Anambra poll, residents flee over rising insecurity. That's on page 4. In greater detail with the following riders. Sporadic gunfire frightens residents, 2 killed in court clash. Police assure residents of adequate security and call for calm. Traditional and religious leaders warn IPOB against hampering conduct of election. And other headlines there on the front page, tanker explosion case 3 in Niger. Proscriber Motekun, northern youths tell federal government. Yinka Odumaken's widow gives birth to twins. And CBN releases criteria for companies' participation in 100 for 100 PPP. And lastly, Irabo, that's Chief of Defense Staff, wants voluntary retirement for 19 victimized generals. That story continues on page 4. Bio.
Thank you, Kinsley. Let's start with the conference on parties of the UN Framework Convention, for which President Muhammadu Buhari traveled to Glasgow, Scotland yesterday. He's expected to deliver a national statement at the head of state and government segment of the conference tomorrow. Expectedly, he will highlight Nigeria's priorities and activities taken to tackle climate change, especially progress in Nigeria in the transition to low-carbon economy consistent with the Paris Climate Agreement. Nigeria is a signatory to the Paris Agreement COP26. The president is expected to participate in some of the sideline events to be hosted by US President Joe Biden and another by French President Emmanuel Macron. After Glasgow's summit, President Muhammadu Buhari will proceed to France on an official visit. It is a reciprocal visit to the visit of President Macron to Nigeria. The People's Democratic Party held its elective convention over the weekend. There were 34 aspirants for 21 vacant positions of National Working Committee members. 18 candidates emerged by consensus, while 3 positions were contested for. Dr. Yosha Ayu emerged as chairman, while Senator Samuel Anyanwu is now the national secretary. The 3 positions that were contested for were Deputy National Chairman North, Deputy National Chairman South, and the National Youth Leader. Governor Amadou Fintiri, the chairman of the PDP 2021 National Convention Organizers Committee, announced the outcome of the 3 positions. Ambassador Umaru Lamagum pulled 2,222 votes to become the Deputy National Chairman North. He beat Hajia Ino Chiruma, who scored 365 votes. Ambassador Taufik Arakwaja polled 2,004 votes to beat Prince Olagusoyi Oyinlola, who scored 707 votes for the position of Deputy National Leader South. For the National Youth Leader, Kadade Suleiman scored 3,072 votes to overcome Usman El-Kudan, who scored 219 votes. In his remark, Dr. Yasha Ayu says that the People's Democratic Party remained the only party in the country, describing its rival in power as a contraption. He said the PDP will receive mammoth crowd in days to come. He said many imagined that the convention will break up the People's Democratic Party. Their dreaming, he said, was in Wonderland and misplaced. On Friday, the appeal court in Port Harcourt struck out the appeal of former national chairman Uche Secondus seeking to stop the exercise. The three-man appeal panel, in an unanimous decision, held that the application lacked locus standi. Justice Gabriel Kolawole, who read the ruling, said, Mr. Secondus, the appellant, his motion fails and is hereby dismissed. The sixth respondent, that is the People's Democratic Party, is empowered to hold its convention without hindrance. Dr. Yashachu, who is now the chairman, yesterday said the PDP will come back, unite our people together, north, south, east, and west. On the side of some happenings over the weekend, law enforcement officials were reported to have invaded the residence of Justice Mary Peter Odili to execute a search warrant. The warrant was said to have been issued by a magistrate. As the point of execution, the security operatives at the residence challenged those security who had come to the home of the justice. In the ensuing confusion, the issuing magistrate is said to have revoked the search warrant, having discovered that it was procured on the premises of a misrepresented fact. The Economic Financial Commission denied involvement in the search warrant execution. The Office of the Attorney General also says that there is nothing like joint panel on recovery in the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. It says that the statement from the Office of the Attorney General says that the Assets Recovery and Management Unit that exists in the Office of the Attorney General does not carry out sting operations. The Attorney General is on record that he has reached out for investigation and prosecution of anyone involved. The Nigerian Bar Association President Olumide Akpata says such affront undermine the rule of law in a democracy. Meanwhile, there was a siege once upon a time at the National Assembly, it may be recalled, and there were consequences from that aftermath. Cross River State has a budget, and he has presented his annual project, and it's not strange. But what is strange about it is title of the budget. When Cross River first had its first budget, it titled it the Budget of Deep Vision. That was in 2016. In 2017, the budget was titled Infinite Transposition. In 2018, the budget was Kinetic Crystallization. 2019, it had Kabbalistic Desanctification. In 2020, it was a budget of Olympotic Meritamasis. 2021, what was the budget title? Budget of Blush and Bliss. The budget 2022 has now been presented by Governor Ayade, and the proposed budget is for an estimate of 276 billion, 106 billion for recurrent expenditure, 170 for capital projects. What did he call the budget this time? Budget of conjugated agglutination. If you are
That's a mouthful.
If you are wondering about the bombastic titles of the governor is a professor of microbiology.
Let's quickly go to Al Jazeera before you continue. From the Al Jazeera, Nigeria, we have presidency, IU's emergence spurs South agitation. And we have Buhari host Tinubu receives briefing from Naval Chief. That was before he left for Glasgow, Scotland for the COP26 conference. And reps flay siege on Odili's residence, urges probe. You find details on page 10. Over 4,000 PDP ABGA members defect to APC in the FCT, details on page 29. Politics and policy, Governor Anambra Gaba, no voting in 86 polling units, says INEC. Details on page 31. Niger Commissioner denies $181 million foreign loan. Details on page 8.
It is not all tension in Anambra. Governor Willie Obiano has commissioned Anambra Cargo and Passenger International Airport, Umeri. The airport was commenced 15 months ago, and it has undergone test landing for 3 aircrafts, and since then, 8 other aircrafts has landed at the airport. The Governor Obiano says that 4 hills had to be flattened to accommodate the building of the airport, but that is described as one of the best in Africa. He says the airport was built in 13 months without borrowing. 4 airlines have already agreed to commence flight operations to Anambra International Airport, Umeri.
That's nice.
All right, pretty interesting. There are a number of developments. Sometimes I wonder whether Honorable Patrick Obahiagmo is consulting for the Cross River State Governor in terms of christening his budget. Which of course provides some source of good laughter. But whether the budget actually impacts the people of Cross River and the economy of Cross River is an open question. I don't have the facts, but sometimes this bombastic entertainment has its value only for a limited period of time. The other one, that's the siege to the residence of the Justice of the Supreme Court, Mrs. Mary Odili, is another embarrassment. And of course, the NTA is already taking that up, and the senior lawyers are all up in arms. What happened? What went wrong? What was the purpose? I'm sure that the facts will emerge going forward on that particular incident. There is a story there about rent, whether it should be on a monthly basis or on an annual basis. This story has been with us for several decades. Rent never used to be on an annual basis.
No.
Rent, just monthly. Come on, rent never used to be. It used to be monthly. Now it's part of the elite malaise in Nigeria that you want to harvest and recoup all your investments
in one fell swoop.
In one fell swoop, so that the money comes and you say, oh yeah, it's sizable enough for me to do something. In which other economies do you find rent being paid annually? In fact, by the time it's getting into annual, you can have yearly tenancy. There's no question about that in law. You have monthly tenancy. Some people, they will be talking about leases. And a lease technically isn't the same thing as a tenancy, because the tenor is not exactly the same, and then the incidences are also not the same.
A lease is for a period.
Yeah, what is wrong with collecting your rent at the end of the month? What is wrong with it? And you know, there's no Nigeria. And it is worse when you are a fresh tenant. You are required to pay for 2 years,
including agent fee.
Oh no, that is normal. Agents and legal fees, those are normal, 5% each. Yeah, because an agent, that's how they also make. They have to find out. They have to find a property for you, and so on and so forth. But once you get that, you know, it's part of the challenges that we have imposed on ourselves. The elite, I would say rather, have imposed on the economy. Nowadays, it is a lot easier, I would imagine, with electronic transfers and so on. In the past, when you had to count your money to pay to a landlord will say, oh, you know, the ordeal of having to come around every month. If the landlord has an account, you pay into the account. You make your transfer. It's a lot easier. The issue is not to bemoan it. It's to say, look, how do you crack this issue that has bedeviled us for several decades now? I think this menace started with in the 70s when oil money just poured in, and then everybody wanted to, you know, start reaping handsomely without the patience of. No, it doesn't just make sense. The investment is not going to go. Your house is there, the tenant pays some caution fee or otherwise when the property is being let out. So your property will always be there, but you have to pay the money once so that when the man or the lady, the landlady, some of them are here, they are very brutal. But you know, when they see the money, they will say, "Yeah, this money has come." Bayo, you understand what I'm saying? Yes, Juma, you are smiling. And this is not intended to cast aspersion on it, but the point is, how do we stop this? And if you recall, in Abuja and also in parts of Lagos, I don't know whether it's still going on, some landlords were collecting rent in foreign currency.
Yes. It depends on where you're living. Well, on that note.
Well, I'm just going to add that I was a tenant before, and it was Herculean. What I needed to do was to save a specific amount every month to make sure that I'll be able to pull it together at the end of the year. But salaries are paid monthly. But when you demand rent annually, it becomes a big problem. But he who wears the shoes knows how it pinches and has to plan how to avoid the.
You have to go through every day in Abuja. You have to keep counting your coins.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Well, sorry, I don't buy us living. It's you know, we often lacerate the social media for being purveyors of fake news and bad news and hysteria. Over the weekend, I'm sure you must have seen the video that circulated of some pupils who were knee-deep in flood water.
Puddle water.
Not the puddle, flood. Puddle is light. Knee-deep, and they were reciting the national anthem. Initially, when that video came out, there was no indication as to the location of that particular incident. But within hours, it was clarified that it was in a place called Makoko. You're familiar with that? It's a riverine part of Lagos, of course, it's riverine part of Lagos.
And you could see the feature among the children. They were just glancing here and there.
That's right. But the purpose of that was explained, but why it had to be done is something. As the Lagos State Commissioner for Education has already taken up the issue. So that's one positive coming out of the social media, the kind of reaction that is elicited, and then, of course, positive steps we hope that the Lagos State government will take.
Yes, indeed. Well, Bayo, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
that. A pleasure, as always. We'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin.
The broadcast media ecosystem is dynamic and requires continuous training for practitioners to perform optimally. NTA TV College JOS invites relevant officers to the following specially packaged training programs. Transmitter operation and maintenance. Date 1st November to 5th November 2021. 1 week. Photojournalism and photography. Date 8th November to 26th November 2021. 3 weeks. Advanced broadcast accounting and auditing. Date 22nd November to 3rd December 2021. 2 weeks. The course fee for the 3-week course is 130,000 naira per participant, while the fee for the 2-week course and 1-week engineering course is 100,000 naira only per participant, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-43830 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're welcome back. And to begin our conversation, which is on issues in monetary policy, here's correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi with a background report.
The monetary policy is an instrument used by the Apex Bank to stabilize the economy as well as strengthen the naira. Over the years, the Central Bank of Nigeria has churned out various monetary policies to make exports cheaper and attractive to importers from other countries as well as boosting local production. However, inflation is continually on the rise and bringing it down appears dicey. The urban inflation rate increased by 17.19% year-on-year in September 2021 from 17.59% recorded in August 2021. While the rural inflation rate increased by 16.08% in September 2021 from 16.45% in August 2021. In July the same year, the Central Bank of Nigeria took a bold step by banning sales of foreign exchange by bureau de change operators, explaining that the market has become a conduit for illicit forex flows. As it stands, weekly sale of forex by the CBN now goes directly to commercial banks, even though the BDC operators are still active and using shortcuts to obtain forex. The launching of the e-Naira by President Buhari comes with the prospect of $29 billion GDP growth. The e-Naira is the digital form of the physical Naira, built on blockchain technology that prevents duplication or creation of fake units. Now, what effects will these policies and innovation have on the national economy, and what are the trickle-down benefits for the common man? Guests on the program will discuss the issues in a moment.
Thank you very much, Oyoyemi Ajayi, for that background. With us in the studios to discuss those issues and more, let's welcome Dr. Hassan Mahmoud. He's the Director, Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Dr. Mahmoud, delighted to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you. Also here with us in the studios is our regular guest on economic analysis. That's Professor Ken Ife. He's an economic policy analyst. Prof,
thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigerians.
And joining us from our Ibadan Network Center is Professor Aderigbigbe Olomola, Professor of Economics at the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, NISA, Ibadan, Oyo State. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, gentlemen, once again, our pleasure to have you with us on today's program. Let's begin with the Director of the Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria, Dr. Mahmoud. Dr. Mahmoud, lead us into the operating philosophy around the CBN's monetary policy. We know that, we've been through 2 recessions since 2016. And monetary policy issues around a recessionary economy will obviously be different. We've been out of those recessions. The other one, that's the last one, being more speedily. But we keep hearing that, oh, yes, growth is positive, but that it is fragile. And some would say weak. So what governs Nigeria's monetary policy as being handled by the central bank?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. The central bank has a mandate. The monetary policy is a channel or the policy area, the mechanism to which you achieve those mandates. Principal in that mandate is monetary and price stability. Stability is a relative term because you just mentioned there are episodes within the Nigerian economy. There are when you have the stable time, and there's when there are the stormy weathers. During crisis, policy tools that will be used will be different from when things are normal. Over this period, or let's say over the last 6-7 years, we have technically like 2-3 crises, major crises, which dipped the Nigerian economy to negative territories. The policy tools that are going to be used at those periods to address those challenges will be different from the standard monetary policy tools you use when inflation is single digit, when employment is high, when GDP is highly positive, like when you used to have 7-8% GDP. So within that context, I want to say monetary policy is more of now looking at meeting these mandates, but having growth very inclusive, participatory growth. You see growth in the economy that is skewed because of the structural, superstructure of the Nigerian economy. You see the super rich getting excessively richer and the poor getting poorer faster. If GDP drops by 0.5%, you see millions of people getting below the poverty line because the income level at that disposable income at the lower end is extremely low and fragile. What we're saying now is make growth inclusive. Let wealth creation be tied to employment generation. Let it be tied to people that are in the low cadre having jobs so that you can boost your domestic aggregate demand to drive the supply side of the economy. So you see a situation where, and people have said it in the media, that yes, they said GDP is growing, but we're getting poorer. They said inflation numbers are coming down, but if you go to the market, prices are going up. So you see those dilemmas faced in terms of how people understand monetary policy. And that's why I said it is important that we look at it from the perspective of what episode of the economy are we in at a particular time. In periods of normalcy or fairly normalcy, it's been said, generally now that crisis is more or less constant. Your ability to, be resilient within those crises is the policy, philosophy that is supposed to drive that. Now, but that crises are surprises now is no more. Prices are constant. However, because the business cycle is what you look at, then you have to have resilience measure, what we call shock absorber stabilization tools to be able to address those shocks. So within those crisis period is what I would say monetary policy is looking at, ensuring macroeconomic stability. We said price and monetary stability conducive for a sustainable growth. Sustainable growth is also a very big thing that you need to also dimension the policy, perspective of looking at those issues.
Okay, indeed. Thank you for your opening comments. Let me join Professor Ken Ife. Recession is the world over. The impact of recession has been felt, and including the shock of COVID-19, and Nigeria is not left out. We've been talking about monetary policy. How impactful is it on economic growth?
Okay, well, I think let me begin by saying that I agree with Dr. Mahmood in his analysis on the situational aspect of monetary policy. In 2008, we've gone through three. In 2008, we had a different kind of challenge. It was prime mortgages in U.S. coming down, hitting the financial system. And don't forget that the primary focus of central bank is maintaining financial system stability and also price stability, which is inflation and all that. So the attack was mainly at the banking sector. So Sanusi was there then, and what we did was to create AMCON and give 6 trillion naira of public fund to use it to rescue the financial system. It worked, but we paid the price because we've only recovered about less than 1.5 trillion of that money. But that is the kind of fiscal measure didn't need to come in, but that was the kind of challenge we faced in 2008. Then in 2016, we had a different one, which was oil price evaporated away and production volumes crashed. We saw 60% of our revenue disappear. And then we needed to attack it both by fiscal and monetary. But for some strange reason, central bank was left alone to deal with the matter. And so central bank tried to allow liberalization of the market, the price forex, and then it devalued. It didn't do anything. It went to macroeconomic prudential measures. It tried those problems. Then it actually went to capital account control, and then we started getting hit by JP Morgan and Barclays. They started delisting us. So we had to jump to demand management, foreign currency demand management. And that was where he brought 43 items under control. He didn't ban any of them. Being accused of ban, he didn't ban. He says, I'm sorry, I haven't got the foreign exchange to give you to import frivolous items that we can produce in this country. So that was how he dealt with that, and that suppressed demand on one side, but they still went to the black market and kept getting their money and importing their things. Now, this kind of recession we had the last year was stagflation, which was where we were having a contraction on output, and at the same time, inflation was rising. It's stagflation. It's not the usual kind of inflation. Now, they needed to, and then it was happening at the behest of COVID. COVID was an existential problem. If you don't do anything, people are dying. So you can't, do nothing is not an option. Then we also have another existential problem, which is security. The security was pervasive and it was asymmetric in 6 geopolitical zones. You don't know who you are fighting, and you are seeing people dying, and so they couldn't, and you have to spend money to buy equipment. So it's a matter of life and death. If we didn't do much, we'll become Afghanistan. Everybody will pack away from this country. So all of those, and then you see poverty was, as he described, we were at the edge because the whole brunt is borne by the base of our economic pyramid, who suffer. Just a drop in 0.5% growth rate will hit them more than it hits the rich. So there was a handshake quantitative response, fiscal monetary and monetary policy response, and then you saw money come out to deal with the problem because we wanted to grow the economy. And also to grow consumption. It's not just growing the output, but also to grow the consumption so that whatever we are producing is being bought. The capacity. So with that, we jumped out of recession in 1 quarter. Not many countries have still come out of that. So on balance, there are very shifting exigencies, and the structural factors holding down monetary policy effectiveness and many of the things we would want to see, we are not addressing those structural factors. All we are just trying to do is to beat up monetary policy as if it has its own limitations. It does have.
Professor Kenife, thank you. We will return to you. You talk about those structural imbalances in greater detail. Let's go over to our Ibadan Network Center, where we earlier introduced Professor Aderibigbe Olomola of NISA. Professor Olomola, give us your own perspective on the theoretical framework that governs the CBN's monetary policy approach in terms of providing financial and price stability, and yet they look at the numbers, whether they are salutary or otherwise.
Thank you very much, Moderator. The monetary policy is a very vital component of policies to manage the economy for stability. And the CBN over the years since 1958 and all that have good grasp of what instruments to use to manage the economy. And in managing the economy through these policies in terms of open market operations, you want to look at the monetary policy rate now, you want to look at the management of liquidity in the economy. The CBN has been up to task in these areas over the years. But what is really menacing and perturbing, very concerning, is that the results we should be seeing, because when we are talking about price stability, we are looking at for example, inflation, we are looking at inflation, we are looking at exchange rate stability, and we are looking at economic growth. Because of the monetary policy instruments are targeted to keep track of inflation, employment, and economic growth. But if you look at what we have been seeing, you see what is happening with inflation. Inflation has been untamable, exchange rate has been unmanageable over the years. And that is why we begin to look at structural factors that could account for this. We would like to see the kind of frustrations people are bringing to the path of monetary policy. And we need to identify this so that we can actually address it. We want to have price stability, for example, in terms of having a single-digit inflation, or even having two-digit growth rate in the country. But over the last 30 years, for example, we haven't really stayed on the path of single-digit inflation. Neither have we even actually reached a double-digit growth in GDP over the years. And this has also dampened even our targeting of growth, our ambition in terms of growth. When we have 2% growth, 2.75% growth, and so on, it has dampened our ambition. I mean, we know what has happened in the last 2 years. Our colleagues have addressed that, the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, we were not doing well about growth. We cannot have this kind of population, close to 200 million, and we are targeting 2.5% growth and so on. It's already a big problem, theoretically, when you have 200 million people to take care of in terms of their consumption, in terms of really expanding the economy, in terms of employment. And you can see the proportion of the population of the labor force, for example, that is not employed now. So we have a big problem on our hand. We need to address, in fact, this is where I'm concerned, we know all the problems. We know all the problems. I think we should be addressing the solution now. What is it that is making the exchange rate unmanageable? CBN will come with regulatory controls to manage the exchange rate, but the bubble will burst. Let us look at the factors there. The CBN wants to really manage the macroeconomic fundamentals, but some structural factors will not let them do this. Let us identify this. That over this period, we have seen one area in which we see continued support of development financing by the CBN. This one area that the CBN has been spectacular in the last 4 years. Look at various sectors, agricultural sector, industrial sector, the SMEs, the MSMEs. Look at the funding that's been going into this area. But there are a number of structural factors that will not allow the economy to see the gains of these interventions by the CBN. So, not that the monetary policy, not that they're not appropriate, but they're being frustrated. Let us look at where we get to the exchange rate, including the digital currency that is being introduced. We get there. You will see it's part of the efforts to promote financial inclusion in the economy, to create employment in the economy, and to reduce cost. A low productivity economy, a low productivity, high cost economy cannot promote growth. And we should bring out other policy to make sure we tame costs in this economy, to make sure we increase productivity in economy, so that everything can be in sync with what the monetary policy is supposed to achieve in terms of low inflation, in terms of even reduction in unemployment, and in terms of high growth. So we need, this is an area where we should make contribution, I think, in this debate, in terms of providing solutions to make monetary policies work. That is, work in the sense of achieving its objectives of macroeconomic stability. You see what is happening with the macroeconomic fundamentals. In spite of the high infusion of monetary policy tools, every quarter we lay out what certain parameters will be, you know, and we are monitoring these parameters rigorously every quarter of the year. But we must look at the factors that are now allowing these parameters to stay at the level expected, to stay at the level projected for the economy. For example, even the 2.86% growth that the CBN projected, the federal government itself projected 3% growth in GDP, IMF projected 2.5% growth in GDP, averaging about 2.79% in GDP. It cannot solve fundamental problems that people are facing in the last 2 or 3 years. So we know that we are even below the regime of growth that can make the economy to be stable. So we really have a number of things in terms of solution to suggest.
Indeed, Prof, I'm going to stay with you a little bit more. And you've talked about not, the structural factors that, affecting the monetary policy. There must be some certain level of weaknesses to the policy itself that will affect, the effective implementation of these policies in Nigeria. Can you outline some of them, please?
Now, let's look at the exchange rate, for example. We have to be able to manage the exchange rate for price stability. High rate of the Naira, high exchange rate will at the end of the day also lead to high inflation because of its pass-through effects, from the prices of goods and services imported to domestic prices. But let us look at the import process, for example. You see the kind of imperfections in those markets that even when we say, okay, this is the exchange rate regime, this is the kind of management we want to put in place, through this process of trade itself, imperfections are introduced into the monetary policy to make it virtually unworkable. The CBN may not be in the position to control those trade policies and their imperfections. So you can see with that now, it is not allowing it to maintain a reasonable level of exchange rate and a reasonable level of inflation. This is part of the imperfections. If you want to go still further on the exchange rate, for example, you see what has happened since June. But sometimes maybe delay in taking actions may seem to be one area in terms of the response of the CBN. Maybe that is probably one area we can say probably maybe the delay. But what is causing the delay is political factors. Political factors. So it's a major factor imposing weakness or disallowing the policies to achieve its aims. Look at the Bureau de Change. When June 21st or 27th or thereabout, the CBN now came heavily to perform its role and to clear the system, you can see the political imbroglio and the pressure mounted on the CBN. No, the Bureau de change was going to expand. There were only 74 in 2005. They increased to like 5,089 in 2020 and thereabout. What is the benefit? These people attract benefit to themselves, rent-seeking, when the CBN is focusing on national stability and expansion of growth. The high rate of expansion of Bureau de change clearance and setting up, let us look at what is the motivating factor? It's self-interest. And then the exchange rate that is circulating, and then the money that we're getting, is not being used to finance imports and something. It's used for private interest to make profit. They take the exchange rate as something that they can trade in to make money. And when they get money, they save it, and not even to create employment, to set up businesses. No. For example, election is coming, for example. People want to amass wealth to finance election. This is part of the structural factors. Election in Nigeria is a trade fair. And people want to store money for buying and selling of votes. Because those political bigwigs, it's easy for them to capture the foreign exchange market, accumulate the dollar, and then during election, then they start, the money will come. And these are part of the legacy structural factors we talk about, and which the CBN is not going to be the police to monitor all this. They have done their work. And look at even what this action is causing in the country. They tend to dollarize the economy. And you know, dollar is not a legal tender in this economy. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. But people, you want to pay for hotel, then now big people, they go to hotels that charge like, say, 85,000 naira. Then you pay in dollars. And is CBN going to go to the hotel to start arresting those people? Right in our face here, people are dollarizing the economy. We all kept mute. There are agencies to control this. The agencies monitoring hotels and so on. And if we have not set up institutional framework to stop this, we should do that now before they destroy this economy by those actions. These are the actions that are impinging on the effectiveness and quality of CBN monetary policies that we are having, and which we need to curtail. Let us look at even development financing. Look at how the CBN is using its own development financing component of helping growth in the economy to devise means on financing several factors. Look at value chain financing that is going on in the agricultural sector, for example. And if you do this very well, you see it will create employment and create wealth. And when you do this, you reduce import of those commodities, let's say rice, for example, and other soybean, for example, cashew, cocoa. If they are doing value chain financing for processing, and I know SMSs and various financing projects, the Ankoboras that the CBN is doing, if we have no structural factors impinging on the success of this, some people who don't have farms at all, they lock on to these Ankoboras, they get the money, they don't use it to perform this. But there are some who still use it, but you therefore not have the estimated quantity of supply that you require to dampen inflation in the economy. And this is very important. And you can find out that because of critical supply shortages, the spiral of inflation, the disequilibrium in macroeconomic fundamentals is hinged upon also insecurity and these foreign exchange movements in the country. So exchange rate devaluation, and also the bottlenecks, the imperfection in the exchange rate that makes the exchange rate so high now, artificially, is fueling inflation, making it difficult for the CBN to tame inflation. The insecurity that's also reduced supply shortages in the agricultural sector is also heightening food inflation, also contributing to the rise in headline inflation that we're achieving, making it difficult for this monetary policy to achieve these fundamental objectives of price stability and economic growth in the system. These are the factors we need to redress powerfully by the government so that monetary policies can work. Monetary policy will not work in such a chaotic environment. It is not expected, theoretically and fundamentally, that monetary policy will work with this level, apart from the pandemic, with this level of chaos in the economy that reduces supply, that increases cost artificially, making it cost push. These are the factors that are not making the monetary policy achieve its optimum impact in the economy, and which we need to address very seriously.
So, Lomola, thank you very much there for the insights that you have provided. Virtually, it's like Dr. Hassan Mahmoud has an advocate in the other two guests. But of course, they have pointed out some of the structural impediments. That's to say, Professor Lomola. Professor Kenife, you were the first to hint at the structural challenges that are impeding the effectiveness of monetary policies being enunciated by the central bank. You may wish to also speak to this, perhaps in a more concise manner, before we bring in Dr. Mahmoud again.
Okay, as a country, we have two visions besides 2020 that's gone. We have a vision of $1.64 trillion GDP in 9 years' time, 2030, and another one of 6.4 trillion in 2050, pointing to growth. But the reality is that our population is growing faster than most countries in the world at about 2.8 to 3% per annum, our population. Our urbanization is moving from 48.8% to 75% by 2030, showing that all our young people are heading to the urban areas. Also, we also know that reality is that over 65 years or above is the average age of the farmer producing the food we are eating today. So you imagine what will happen to the food production system by 2030. So in this circumstance, we have to grow the economy. Not growth is not an option. You have to grow this economy because urbanization is moving at 4.66% rate every day, every year. Population 2.3. You cannot stay stagnant.
Population is 3% minimum.
3 to 3.2%.
Yeah.
So if you have that, you have to grow the economy. Otherwise, poverty will get worse and it will get out of hand. The other one is employment. We all send our children to university. Only 7 to 9% of them find job. So 93% come out without job. And you're telling me that it's sustainable. Do nothing is not an option. Because it will come back to the political system, it will come back to everybody when the boys and girls come out in the streets. I wouldn't want that. So you must grow the economy. And so how do you grow the economy? You have to focus on the people that get the least support at the base of our economic pyramid, and he has mentioned some of that. And so what you saw, a dramatic thing that you saw, because agriculture is on the witness stand. So what you saw is a pervasive supply of money into this system that we've never seen in the life of our country, where over 3.7 million farmers have accessed loan without having to bring collateral, just using their BVN and satellite coordinate of their 1 hectare, whatever. And you see nearly 5 million hectares extra being grown, in spite of the challenge of the insecurity across the 6 geopolitical zone. Because the insecurity has been shrinking the agroecological footprint. But we are fighting back with incredible response, having millions of farmers access credit and produce food. And then bringing in mechanization, launching everything, new seedling, the whole chain, the whole value chains being attacked. So this is because of the monetary policy's response, quantitative response from the development finance aspect. So that's how we are beginning to deal with what is a crisis situation, caused by insecurity, caused by all other variables. Now, you say, but what are the structural factors? Can you explain to me why a central bank that was previously having about $3 billion every month funded by NMPC to the reserves, and suddenly for the whole year, nothing has come in? And then you expect it to go and get money where? Much of the money coming into the reserves, where is it coming from? Some of them have borrowed money. Some money, when you borrow, then you have some of the borrowing, those dollars, those dollar-based borrowing. So you see them going into the... And then you see the bank came out last year to attack the issue around remittance, to see whether some of it can actually hit the shores. Because what we're having is that, is shenanigan. We don't want to go there. But it was beginning to deal with that. And then there are so many other sources. It's just frankly... You can't depend on FDI because FDI has gone. It's kissed goodbye. We got only 1 billion last year. All this is coming down from about 10 billion down to 1 billion. This year, it will not go more than $600 million. That's foreign direct investment. And if you like, you can go and devalue the money to $550. It's not going to increase, bring $1 extra on foreign direct investment because we are not dealing with the structural issues, the concerns of that coming in. Foreign portfolio investment, it vanished in March last year. Because of all the COVID issue and all the speculation around the economy, they went. And they are coming in trickles. And of course, for them to come, they expect a very, very high interest rate to come and creep. And then those conditions are not so conducive for them to come. So you have to manage what you have. You know, what we have is not what we are managing.
Okay, Prof, we will get into the details of not managing what we have efficiently or effectively. There's a point that you have raised, which has to do with some would say, alarming rate of urbanization. I've been to some urban centers in Nigeria, and sometimes I just get worried by the surge of apparently jobless young persons milling around all over the place. Do we understand the drivers of this rapid urbanization and the kind of challenges that it will pose socially and economically?
Well, the major concern is if you want young people to stay in rural areas, how are you going to engage them? First of all, the CBN has started getting all kinds of value chains, there are 10 of them, aquaculture, cattle, all this rice, grit, so that people can access money to actually do what they can. And wherever you are, if you need to clear land, they give you money for clearing land. If you need to mechanize them, which is ridging, harrowing, and they provide all that, the seed, they give you the correct seed, they give you the fertilizer that is relevant to the soil, they do all that, the whole chain, aggregators, and all that whole value chain sorted out. So people can comfortably do what they need to do. They don't need to worry about selling the goods because they already sold on the arrangement. They don't need to go and... so many things have been sold. Okay, that's one. The second one is that the technology that they need, they want to have it in rural areas. So if they don't get it, they go to the urban areas because they can't tell them not to use mobile phone. You don't have to watch television. They have to go to the urban areas. But here, you've seen massive investment in payment infrastructure by the CBN. So you can stay where you are and you do all your money. And when we had COVID and lockdown, the industry that gave the highest growth was financial and ICT. Yeah. Because people were sitting wherever they are and transacting. That was only made possible because we had an aggressive bank that wanted to unlock all the lacunas in the chain and then put money on infrastructure, USSD infrastructure and payment infrastructure, license more people in. Now, even the e-Naira is going to say, if you don't have network, you will still be transacting wherever you are. Do you understand what I'm saying? It all adds up. It all adds up.
Well, thanks, Prof. I'm sure that Professor Lomola will have the opportunity of weighing in on this aspect. Because the drift to the urban areas, you don't find young people, the best they do sometimes, they are either keke napep or Okada riders. That's what you find them doing in the urban areas. And the surge is really alarming. But Dr. Hassan Mahmoud, let's bring you in again. You've listened to the advocacy by the two profs indicating what the structural challenges are and how this affects ultimately the knock-on benefits of the CBN's policies. But how does the average person, and this will include the average manufacturer, the average businessman, and of course, Jumai and I, with the exclusion of yourself and Prof and the other Prof, how would we explain that, look, the value of the money that we have in our hands is diminishing? Headline inflation has been going down the past 5 months, and yet the purchasing power, it's impossible. It is not just food inflation. All kinds of items are costly. They are difficult to access. And we keep hearing, for those, of course, who access the forex market, oh, this is the exchange rate today. And there is a sense of alarm, even though it is, again, often said that a small percentage of transactions that occur at the parallel market rate. But it is just the effect on the pocket and therefore the confidence of the consumer. How does he understand what the CBN is doing and the claims that, things probably are working from your end?
Thank you very much, and let me thank the two professors for the very good advocacy they've done in terms of how they've explained the situation of the economy and the dilemma within the purview of the central bank. Prices. There are three kinds of prices. The prices of goods and services, which feeds to inflation directly. Interest rate is also a price. Exchange rate is also a price. So when we talk of central bank ensuring monetary and price stability, we're looking at these three buckets. The prices of goods and services in the real sector, the interest rate is in the financial sector, and exchange rates in the external sector. So within the bucket of the economy, you have four key sectors. We have the real sector, agricultural, manufacturing, industrial. You have the monetary sector where central bank comes in and look at money, short-term money rate, money market rates. Long-term money market rates are in the capital side of the market. And then you have the financial sector where we look at the banks and look at the financial soundness indicators and how banks can support the economy through credit. And then the external sector, which looks at the import and export. These four sectors, where central bank tools are most potent, is the monetary and the financial sector. The other two sectors, real sectors and the external sectors, are the issues the professors are flogging on, the structural rigidities within the economy. So if you have those four buckets and you need to connect them, because, well, like I said, monetary policy is to drive sustainable growth. It's not just a policy tool on its own, standing in isolation. It's supposed to fit into that. So if these other four buckets are not, synchronizing with where the monetary policy trajectory is going, then you start seeing these distortions, these unexplained dilemmas, these structural issues, and you have this debate whether the issues are monetary or physical or structural. So if you look at those three prices that I've mentioned to you, driving inflation, and let me also explain this, even though it's not very palatable. When we talk of inflation, we are looking at changes in the movement of price over two periods. So you can have a situation where let me give a clear example. Rice, a bag of rice is 1,000 naira in January. By February, it moved to 15,000 naira. By March, it moved to 12,000 naira. Technically, the rise in price has reduced, but the absolute price has not changed because it's moving 10, 15, and then it came down. So if you look at that change, percentage change over those two periods, you will say that, yes, the speed at which it is rising has reduced, but the price is still high there. That's just for theoretical. What is important is that let it come down, whether it's the percentage change or the absolute terms. So and what is driving those changes in price? One, and the professors have also flogged on this a lot, is the structural issues. Inflation numbers, the central bank monetary policy framework, or the monetary policy framework we adopt, is what we call monetary targeting. We're looking at the quantity of money in the economy to be driving the prices. So the philosophy behind that is that the volume of money in the economy determines the price of goods and services. The professors know this more than me. The quantity theory of money is what, if you denominate the velocity, you look at money supply determining the price of goods and services. And what makes our GDP, when we say real GDP, the denominator is inflation. So when you look at, the welfare effect, what inflation does is that those gains, those monetary gains, are discounted by inflation. So in real terms, what you get is the real effect of the changes in prices over these two periods. So when we look at inflation numbers, we look at what are the factors that are driving inflation. And the major component of inflation is food prices, is food, the food component, the CPI. Now, what is making the prices of food to go up? The professor mentioned about issues around security. We also mentioned issues about disposable income of the generality of the people, those that are engaged in the agricultural sector. We talk about issues of how the agriculture or manufacturing itself are being able to adopt, latest technology, productivity issues, not necessarily production. At what cost do you produce? So you see those costs feeding into the final price of goods and services. issues around transportation. Even if you produce, how do you get them to the market? Even if you produce, how do you store them for the period when people will buy them? Even if you produce, how do you package them to be attractive to the, so many issues that are around us, which more or less they are structural issues. How do you address those issues? And that's why central bank policy is nice. Okay, since we have these supply side or structural issues, how can we, deal with those risk sector problems in terms of intervention, boosting agriculture, boosting manufacturing output growth, retail, services? How do we support? Because you can't just sit down that, oh, my own is just to bring down prices. When the factors that are bringing that are driving those prices are outside of your purview. But there's a space there, of central bank monetary policy to use developmental, channels to drive this output growth. Because if you don't get that output growth in the market, and this is also extending to the external sector, which I'll also talk about. If you don't have that growth in output substantially to drive prices down, and also Professor also mentioned it, and Professor over there also mentioned, it's two sides. As you are producing at lower cost, you should also be able to have the demand to pick up those so that inventories will go up from the sellers or the producers, and they will continue producing. That's the sustainability of it. So if you don't have those two sides of it, monetary policy are more to the demand side management. The supply side management are issues that are long-term, outside the purview of the central bank. But central bank will not sit down that these are not, things that we shouldn't deal with. How can we, as an economy, synergize on our policy tools and strategies to drive this growth? And that's why issues that were mentioned around interventions in the real sector and the monetary side, and then the external side I was talking about. We all talk about exchange rate, what was the value of the exchange rate. The same factors that caused devaluation in 1986 during the structural adjustment program in exchange rate are the same factors that are also driving exchange rate behavior as at today. Fundamentally, you see, if you don't produce for export, we don't print dollars. If you don't produce for export, you don't get the dollars. If you rely only on the oil as your main export, oil is exogenous in terms of the determination of prices of oil. And if you look at the Nigerian economy, I talked about the 3 or 4 episodes of crisis. They are all exogenous. They are all external shocks. So if you're going to play in that global scene, you have to be very competitive in that global scene. Otherwise, all the shocks will drop on your head, and then they will march on you, and those economies will be growing. If you see the trajectory we are going, when we started, or I'm talking of in the 70s now, we were producing for manufacturing sectors abroad, what we call primary production as inputs or raw materials. Yes, that was the word they were using. Raw materials to serve those economies. And those economies were growing and developing. After those economies saturated, when they call them matured economies, they are almost at full employment. The production capacity has been exhausted. So they go into services. We are consumers of those services again. So we are moving away. So we are the ones supplying those inputs to drive that production of that economy. Why can't we flip that side of it? So that we are the economies of the world are getting from us, and then we were growing. I think we are more intelligent to see that coming, that what we produce more is to be value addition. I hope the AFTAC opportunity we have now will create that window where Nigeria, being a very large economy with a lot of potentials, with a lot of complexity in terms of the things we can produce, can tap on that market and be able to, dominate. I don't want to use dominate, be more competitive in other West Africa, East Africa, and Southern African countries, so that the things we produce are being consumed there. It's not what you consume that determines your destiny. It's what we're able to produce that other consume. So it is.
Yeah, but there was a talk about import substitution years past as one of the ways of diminishing our import dependence, and therefore also not rapidly eroding our external reserves. Yeah. It never worked.
Yeah, the import substitution strategy was just around why we should not be too dependent in terms of how we rely on foreign inflows for us to be able to manage our economy. So the demand, and like I said, demand side management is the key issue here. the demand for FX, because of our import dependence, was so humongous. Like I mentioned, in the 1986, when we had that the structural adjustment program, between 86 and 87, our external reserve of 10 billion dropped to 1 billion. Yeah, we've seen in the last 5-6 years how external reserve 60, now we rover to 20 something. We're getting back to 40, and like Professor said, largely lined by loans, IMF loan, SDRs. It's not that there were inflows that were coming from agriculture, coming from manufacturing, because even if you export to Ghana here, you still get foreign inflows, because none of our currencies are convertible. So those transactions are done in dollars. So you get those, you don't have to export to United States or even within, and you see what China is doing. It's not even facing the advanced, it's being the largest exporter to the advanced economy. It's facing developing economies and even giving facilities for them to produce so that they can use their machineries, because they've already exhausted their space for that. So they want to bring in manufacturing, they want to bring in roads, they want to bring in airports. So they help you, give you the loans to take those. Those are strategies that we also be looking at. The import substitution strategies collapse because we are still substantially import dependent. And we keep talking about exchange rate is not good. What do you need the exchange rate for? I see, Kinsley, I think apart from your wristwatch, everything you're wearing there must be local. So if you have...
Thank you very much.
Even the wristwatch. So it's just Kinsley.
I don't know, with the exception of the wristwatch.
The wristwatch. Everything is local.
Kinsley you're seeing here. So you think
no, I don't know whether this is from Dubai.
Juma is imported fully.
Yes, I don't know whether this is from Dubai or not. But if we don't, have that flair for importation, what do we need the FX for? And Professor also mentioned, you see, if you look at substantially the clamor for exchange rate issues is around the inflow of FPIs, foreign portfolio investment, and they call it portfolio. Portfolio is small. When anything happens here, you take it, you go out. We don't need those kind of funds at this time. There are periods where we need that to deepen our capital market, deepen our money market, but now we need FDIs. FDIs that will stay, that will bring about production. Yes, we don't have the technology, we don't have the manpower sufficient to drive that competitive level. But when we bring it in and we adapt it, then there's skill acquisition, there's internalization of those technology, and then the economy will grow.
Dr. Hassan Mahmoud, I know, Juma, sorry, while it's still on this flight, it is not as if Nigeria was not at some point industrialized to a certain degree. Yeah. We suffered deindustrialization. And I'm sure you must have encountered, we suffered deindustrialization. Yeah. There were all kinds of things, textile. In different parts of the country, it wasn't just only in Kaduna. Go to Lagos, if you came to the old Midwest, if you went to Kano, old Midwest, there were at least 2 textile mills. There was one Edo textile mill in Benin. There was Asabatex, which also had a football team. Then if you went to the east, you had
2 million jobs gone.
Textile was there. You could have them. Berek was producing all kinds of things that you had. So what is it that Odu tires, for instance. Today, I don't know, Michelin left Port Harcourt. So anyway, these are some of the points that you may wish to also factor in to see to tell us whether indeed there's an appreciation of the structural impediments that continue to block those other industries from re-emerging and then getting us to re-industrialize. But you saw we're going on a break, Jumai?
Yeah, we're going on a break now. When we return, our conversation continues.
Ministry of Works and Housing has the responsibility to help improve the quality and the quantity of the road infrastructure assets, which are the roads and the bridges and the highways. At the moment, we have over 13,000 kilometers of road network under repair, reconstruction, or rehabilitation out of the existing 35,000 kilometers of federal road network. These 13,000 kilometers are comprising about 850 different contracts which the ministry superintends across Nigeria. We are fulfilling the mandate of our ministry to expand the connectivity of Nigeria's states and by extension the towns and villages through road transport.
Finally, the hero of Nigeria's democracy has arrived. He shall usher us into a new phase of development, peace, and prosperity. He is the father of the new Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Welcome to another season of giving Nigerians hope yet again. We are sure of a great future for both ourselves and generations yet unborn. We look forward to your leading us as a nation into our manifest destiny. Though the challenges against us as a people are many, we know that your leadership shall set us on the right path to our greatness. A new dawn beckons on us all, and having you as our president is a precursor to this. Thank you for believing in Nigeria. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
You're welcome back. Let's join Professor Olumola in our Ibadan Network Center. You know, you've been listening to our guest in the studio, and despite the increasing emphasis on manipulation of the monetary policy, Professor Ken is saying that, you know, growth is not an option at all. Let's look at another policy that just came up recently, which is the e-Naira. You know, Nigeria is projecting a GDP of $29 billion over the next 10 years. In your view, how visible is this project?
Thank you very much. The e-Naira is a new policy, digital currency. This is what I talked about earlier on, about the innovations coming out of the Monetary Policy Authority. They think through, they project into the future. If we want to expand growth, we need to make the growth to be inclusive. And with our population, one aspect of inclusion is financial inclusion. And the digital currency is, I think, a good policy in that direction in terms of having financial inclusion. If you, first of all, there are 4 areas in which we can look at the effectiveness of this policy, and also at this particular time, we have a chaotic situation. And the aspect that I mentioned earlier on, people coming into the policy arena, hijacking the gains of the policy and so on. Now, this is another area, and it's really very, very timely. You have this policy is a legal tender. The e-Naira is a legal tender. Now, and in terms of access, if you look at the access, the users, I mean, it has a wide scope. You have MDAs, financial institutions, you have merchants, you have ordinary citizens, that we have access to this. And it's a legal tender. And guidelines have been provided to guide every component of this users. The financial institutions, have immediately started to create apps and platforms to establish this. And it's also an additional policy to the payment system, cashless policy and expansion of the payment system across the country to be widespread, and also to reduce leakages in the system. And like Professor Ken mentioned the other time, you don't need to traverse various geographical scope in terms of distance to transact financial business these days. So you, as an ordinary citizen, you open up, you can open an account through apps with your banks. You can transact business. You can move, you can transfer money from your Naira account, from your physical Naira account to this digital account. You can make payments and so on. And the ease of business we're talking about, even ease of doing business generally in the economy. This is also one aspect, because when you do business, you have to pay for goods and services, and this makes payment easy because of the access. So this is going to be very, very important in terms of also transfer, both from external to the domestic economy. You use these apps. And this is why I will seize this opportunity to also to talk about the supply of foreign exchange, because the director from the CBN, Dr. Hassan, mentioned the supply side that we need to manage properly if we want to boost the supply. Remittances, for example, the remittances. I hope the CBN, they won't listen anyway, because some members of National Assembly and some other areas say, oh, let us stop. I think it's lack of understanding. Let us, oh, you have some dollars sitting in some people's account. They don't know what supply of supply side means of having a dollar supply in the country. So the one we have, they say government should put their legs on it. It's unimaginable. It's unimaginable. But I at least congratulate the CBN that is not listening, because that's one way of supply of foreign exchange in the country. And if you want to reduce the gap, you can increase the supply through remittances and also through exports. So you don't block one channel because you say, oh, we don't have enough foreign exchange. Okay, the one we have, let's use it immediately. So when you use it today, what do you have tomorrow in the medium term? What do you have the following year in the long term? So I think we need to congratulate CBN from using its expertise, not to listen to people who are supposed to be making laws for good governance. In fact, I think it's the governance system that has even disorganized the whole, what we're having in terms of bottlenecks and effectiveness of this exchange. The governance system. Since 1999, we have these democracies. All the industry, we talk about this industrialization. I think that have gone is people managing these policies. You make this policy, the implementation of these policies is a problem. The policy mindset is a little bit sound, but the political mindset to implement is polluted, and so they tend to disorganize. This digital system will bring more people in the economy into the financial space, and then the speed of transaction, and then the cost of transaction. Even with the cashless policy that we have now, if you look at the cost of transaction, the financial institutions, what they demand from people as cost is prohibitive. And sometimes when the CBN say, oh, fine have been imposed on some banks for, I do not see how this one filters to the customer. It has not filtered. I do not know the recipients of these fines. I don't know how the customers are compensated or their apprehensions are stretched in any way. I do not know. I think this will also address that. This e-Naira will address the abuse of most of the guidelines the financial institutions have been engaging in. This, even the cashless policies with the physical Naira and so on, supposed to reduce transaction cost. But it has escalated transaction costs, including transaction costs of remittance. So this e-Naira will reduce transaction costs of remittances, of doing business in the countries once the platforms and the apps are established by the financial institutions. But we need a lot of enlightenment of people. It is this is a legal tender. It's a legal tender, and the CBN is coming out with guidelines. But these guidelines too, it has to be thoroughly monitored. We should learn from how we have been monitoring the guidelines for the payment system we have. The monitoring, adherence to the monitor has been weak. why is it that costs continue to escalate, cost of transaction of the payment system, despite the fact that it's cashless, even higher than what it was before, to the extent that people will not be willing to bring out money for it. And if this money doesn't circulate, even our prediction of what money supply means and something to drive inflation is not going to be thorough. Even our reliance of market forces, like we say, we rely on market forces. Even with this digital currency that is coming in, the market forces we are relying on, they're not carefully studied. And we say, oh, let the forces of demand and supply determine the exchange. It's a dangerous thing when you do not properly characterize the market. We do not properly characterize the market. What do you demand foreign exchange for? You demand foreign exchange for, let's say, you say medical tourism, or you want to set up business, but you get it, you get the money, you use it for consumption. We do not see elsewhere. Or you use it, you save it for election trade fair. So is it the kind of market demand? The imperfections in these market forces must be studied and carefully analyzed, so that with the equilibrium price we are talking about can be properly determined, and the CBN can be properly guided. I mean, we have a elegant, sophisticated research department. I think this should be the next research we should do, to look at that market forces we are talking about, and then properly characterize it and get an equilibrium price, which will form the basis of our liberalization of that market, and say, let the forces, if you are depending on the wrong force, we'll be misadvised, misdirected into we have this counter-cyclical problem in the foreign exchange market, because we can describe it by mouth. So these people, let us do a study to properly characterize this market, so that we are not misguided by the wrong market. The forces are terrible. The kind of demand we are seeing is not, we should not, what is the end use of this demand? Let's characterize it and say, this is the equilibrium price we should start with, and to start monitoring that the problem will not get down to the chaos in this market we're talking about. In other climes, where it is not continuously, we say we have a reserve is growing, reserve. Even the communication of what is happening with our reserve by the mass media. Oh, reserve is growing now, it's 35, it's 38 billion. And so in that case, we do not even know the component of that reserve, even when borrowing has been approved and we are drawing down. Oh, we say reserve is growing. And then we therefore see we have Naira, and then we have to be using that to fund the market, the foreign exchange market. I don't think it should be done that way. We need to do research and properly characterize the forces of demand and supply. It's not the Bureau de Change created forces. It's not the fraudulently created forces. It's not black market forces. When we are talking about forces, it's forces of perfect communication and information. In the black market that is driving the exchange rate now, there's no such...
we will have to interject at this point and then come back to the studios. There are quite a number of issues that are on the boilerplate right now. Well, one aspect, I want to link this, but I want Professor Ikenife to begin, and then we'll come to Dr. Hassan Mahmoud. Payment systems, of which e-Naira is the latest innovation for us. E-transactions, we've had that. Indeed, we discussed this topic about a fortnight or so ago. So, but your payment systems must be related to goods and services. And for goods in particular, you have to produce. When you produce, that's part of the industrialization or re-industrialization that we are talking about. How do we win our industrialists from the trade mentality that they have developed, so that they find it easier to say, look, go to the Far East, bring in finished goods, sell, make your profit, and go? One argument from them is that you will not go to any bank and you will get money to finance your industrialization. And that the challenge of the Bank of Industry is not being resolved. The challenge of Bank for Development is also not being resolved. And that the banks are just financing short-term trade, which relates to what the CBN, of course, is doing. And that's to say that the central bank is virtually now almost like a retail banker. So how do we reindustrialize in this context of saying the mentality of person? In the past, when we were industrializing, we still had some impediments, but people were proceeding whatever they were doing.
Yeah, first of all, bear in mind that about 80% of our industrial capacity in the country are involved in imported raw materials or imported spare parts, and that's not the best position to be, where that you are facing that kind of pressure. And then when you have the what you have in the market, some kind of, and people are, you pour in the money, because that's CBN's priority, to make sure that they are getting enough forex to be able to service the production and then help us to bring prices down and be more competitive. It's part of their, but they cannot deal with the issue that some money are collected and then they're diverted into something else. They can't deal with that. They will just hope that the central commercial banks will make sure that the purpose for which these monies are meant are delivered. That's one. Then secondly, on price stability, on price determination, or what they call the optimal level of price. 97%, 93% of our forex is happening within liberalized sector, which is our national forex exchange. It's only 7% that is in the black market. So even if you look at what is the real equilibrium value, it's going to be far away from that 550 that is there. Because can you imagine if 97%, 93% is here on 4110, 4115, and then you have 7% at 550, the equilibrium price is going to be far away from that. It will be still nearer to the bulk. So, but the professor says, let's scrutinize what that money is being used for. So we have to sanitize that, because a lot of them are speculation. Politicians are speculating on the price of the naira, and then they buy in dollars, and then
do we need to review the forex policy?
Yeah, that's a different ball game. But let me tell you something about the way CBN has been handling this. Is focusing on technology, gaining from technology. We follow technology, because technology, Fidel Castro says you either take a revolution or a revolution will overtake you. When you have technologies like blockchain technology that is robust, you're not going to change that technology. The technology is what is going to change you and your services. You either imbibe it and get on with it, or you will be overrun by it. Tell me what would have happened to the commercial banks if they did not have the benefit of improved payment infrastructure and then have agency banking. If they did nothing, they would have been in trouble. And then you have what do you call it, USSD-based payment systems. If they did nothing to embrace it, they would have been in trouble. And then if you now have POS, how many millions of people are using POS today? They don't have to go to the bank. If the banks didn't engage, they would have been in trouble. And then they have mobile money. They are using a mobile phone to transfer. If the banks didn't engage, they would have been in trouble. In fact, this particular COVID last year would have dealt ruthlessly with the banks if they didn't embrace all of these new technology-based facilities coming in. So CBN now say, and CBN began to think about e-Naira since 2017, before this blockchain thing exploded. So it is a movement that is in the right direction. And then you have to embrace it to be able to prepare the economy, to grow the economy. You're now going to see millions of businesses that are going to be based on e-Naira. One of the constraints of monetary policy is that the transmission of monetary policy was a problem when half of the people are not in the banking sector. A lot of the money is not in the banking sector. And then 40% are so poor, below poverty line. So who are you reaching with monetary policy? So transmission of monetary policy is now going to be much more effective, because most people will now enter into the system. Now, government collecting tax. Is there any time you use your phone to make payment, you don't see tax go out? It's going to start getting more tax from everybody. So, and then you begin to see people informal suddenly becoming formal because they are into the net.
But how does this drive reindustrialization?
No, the thing is that the demand, you're actually working on the demand side of the economy. And then you have two other areas to help, which is the demand management that is restricting abuse of this foreign currency to buy products that we do produce, and so reducing the scope. All I wanted is that let the monetary policy, fiscal policy respond and augment, and then you have the trade policy augment, but they're not doing as much as the monetary side. So you are depressing the demand for imports by that policy, and you're encouraging backward integration by pouring in domestic finance to ensure that you create the products, you're funding the products, extra products we are producing. You are giving 1 trillion to the manufacturing sector as the real sector. There's a lot of money. 3.5 trillion was put there on the table during the COVID to encourage all the demand side all the supply side of the economy to produce the products to compete. And then, of course, we still have work to do on the exportability of these products. You've produced them. Are they exportable? Have they reached the quality standards for them to compete? So,
Dr. Hassan Mahmoud.
Yes. I think I want to bring one perspective to this, and it's in the global literature. You see, we've been lamenting on several problems of Nigeria and providing solutions. I want to ask the question, do we really understand the problems? Or do we really know what the problem is? Because if we are using several solutions to solve a problem and the problem persists, just like Kinsley is saying, industrialization is still there, 40 years. Then that means, do you really know the problem? If you are having headache, and they are giving you medicine for malaria, and it didn't go, was that headache really from malaria? Maybe you have high blood pressure. Maybe you have diabetics. Maybe you have something.
Maybe you are stressed.
Maybe you are stressed. So it is important that you know that it is stress, so that you just go and sleep. You don't need to even take any drugs. Sleep over the weekend, and when you come back on Monday, you don't have headache. So I think, studies have been done in this area. There's what we call problem-driven iterative adaptation. Break down your problems, to buckets. I mentioned we have 4 sectors of the economy that are key to this let monetary policy stay first. We have other key vital sectors that will play in this. Let us diagnose this problem. Let's break it down, and let's see how we can start solving it bit by bit. Maybe if we had sat down then and deal with import substitution and concluded with it, we will be dealing with backward integration in the oil sector. The Nigerian economy jumped from primary production to services. That is matured economy. Mm-hmm. So you see people contributing to GDP now in good percentages, but there are only 2 people in that business. You see very, good IT, fintechs that are making hundreds of millions. The people there are 3 or 4. But you have, Council also mentioned, you see the population growth. The GDP is not catching up with that. So real per capita GDP is extremely low. If you look at the inflation, the exchange rate in Indonesia, and you look at their per capita income, the per capita income of Indonesia is like 5 times that of Nigeria. But their exchange rate number is not very different. Their country is also devaluing. So when you look at those issues, we now said, okay, let us look at these problems from each of the sectors, the fiscal, the monetary, the financial, the external sector, the real sector, and diagnose and cascade it down, and then start solving it bit by bit, instead of taking it from the top and say, okay, devalue the Naira, FPIs will come in. And so I think that would be my suggestion, that let us look at it from a problem-driven perspective, understanding not a solution-driven perspective, because we all have solutions. This is the solution, but it's not bringing the results that we want. So let's look at the problems again and see that we really understand the problem and we are engaging the right people. If you are engaging central bank, instead of you to engage the private sector, or instead of you to engage the players in the financial market, then you are engaging the wrong person. Yeah. So let's sit down and look at that, and we have the skills, we have the professors, we have the engineers to deal with that, and then we'll get a solution to that.
Mahmoud, indeed, yes.
I know we are signing off. You see, when they always say that challenges present themselves as opportunities. When we say we are an import-dependent economy for raw materials, some experts have also said that our agricultural produce can also be converted into these raw materials. Like starch industrial starch that we import. Some starch, some products you can derive from yam that the pharmaceutical industry is importing. When do we get, we're importing tires. Carbon black is is a byproduct of the oil and gas industry. Rubber trees all over the place, but who is tapping? Nobody. Jume.
Well, that's for another day, Kinsley. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hassan Mahmoud. He's the Director of Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. We'd also like to thank our regular guest here, Professor Ken Ife, Economic Policy Analyst, and from our Ibadan Network Center, Professor Aderi Bigbe Olomola, Professor of Economics at the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, NESA, Ibadan, Oyo State. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program. Sports Update is next.
Paul Onache ended his goal drought after getting among the goals in Genk's 6-2 win at Zulte Waregem in the Belgian Jupiler on Sunday. Prior to Sunday's game, Onache had failed to score in his last 6 games in all competitions for Genk. Also, he last scored in the league on September 26th when he netted a hat-trick in a 3-home win against Serang. The 27-year-old got Genk's third goal on 47th minute, which took his tally in the Belgian top flight to 10 goals in 12 games. While Rafael Oyedika opened his goals account in the Danish Superliga this season as he scored 2 goals and had an assist in Michelin's 3-1 win against Rangers on Sunday. Oyedika now has 3 goals in all competitions for Midland in the current campaign, while former MFM striker Stephen Ode got Rangers' only goal, which took his tally to 5 in 7 league games this season. He has so far scored 11 goals in 13 appearances in all competitions. And in tennis, Alexander Zverev continued his dominant form since the summer, beating Francis Tiafoe 7-5, 6-4 in the Vienna Open final. Germany's Zverev, 24, edged the 23-year-old American qualifier in 2 tight sets to claim his 5th tour-level title this season. The pair traded breaks before Olympic champion Zverev broke at the end of the first set to lead. He pressured Tiafoe throughout the second set, breaking to love to win.
Played in a wonderful spirit in front of a fantastic crowd. Title number 5 for Zverev, 7-5, 6-4.
All right, let's go over now to the foreign scene.
Sudanese protesters have barricaded roads in the capital, Khartoum, as part of week-long demonstrations against a military coup. Medics say 3 people were killed on Saturday when security forces fired shots and tear gas to disperse protesters in the nearby city of Omdurman, though Interior Ministry denied that live rounds had been fired. The army seized power on Monday, detaining Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and other civilian leaders. The UN Sudan envoy Volker Perthes has met with Hamdok at his residence, saying that the Prime Minister is well but remained under house arrest. Likewise, dozens of Sudanese took to the streets of Paris in France in protest against the coup back home, after violent protests claimed lives and injured around 100 people. They have rejected the military rule and are now calling for a civilian-led government. Now elsewhere, 2 people have died and hundreds evacuated after an underground pipeline in Durban, South Africa caught fire, forcing hundreds of local residents to flee their homes. It is alleged the 3 people were involved in a botched fuel theft attempt, leading to a fire outbreak that engulfed business buildings and an informal settlement. Firefighters, paramedics, police and Metro Police responded to the scene and were able to put out the fire as several people suffered smoke inhalation. The petroleum company involved, known as the Transnet Pipelines National Operations Center, immediately shut down the pipeline and activated the emergency response plan.
All right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria for today, Monday. Program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Join us then. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Do have a great day. But before we go, don't forget to join NTA in the fight against rape and rapists.
StarSat on channel 434 and Free TV on channel 731. NTA Sports 24, where sports thrive.
Wouldn't like to drive in the rain.
It depends on the velocity of the rain.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another interesting package of
Everything music.
Angelina, you dey cool in my temperature. If you call, I go come deliver.
This is Talking Movies.
In times of old, the world was full of wonder.
Stop it! Welcoming you to your weekend for today.
Arise, oh compatriots. It's time to use our voice.
Beyond Six Packs.
Bills, 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 bills.
Pay the bills. Keep paying the telephone bills. Pay my bills.
Welcome to Gallery.
Me and my paddies.
London for what?
London for medicine.
Medicine for what?
Medicine for coffee.
Are you sickness?
To our illness. Welcome to Gist Zone.
All right, my name is the Eselucien Wego One. Ona nyokoko nyonyo.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Hello and welcome to Thoughts for the Week. I'm Cordelia Obey, and the idea is to talk about things we usually would talk about. This time using proverbs, wise sayings, fables, you call them, any name from around the world. And what are we looking at today? We are looking at being faithful to our friends. Welcome. Now, I have a story to share. It's a fable because I have some animals in it. Many, many years ago, there was a shark who had a monkey as a best friend. Every time the shark would swim to the island where this monkey was, and they'll be happy together. One day the shark said, my friend. As some people would say, my friendship. You don't even know where I live. Won't you come and visit me one day? And the monkey said, okay, why not if not? So it hopped onto the back of the shark, and the shark swam fast and straight towards the middle of the sea. When he got to his own home, all his friends, relatives, and all that were very happy. And the monkey said, why are your family people this happy? Shark said, our king is very sick. And they say we need the heart of a monkey to take care of him. And the monkey
was almost fainting. Boy, he was very bold. So he said, my friend, why didn't you tell me what you wanted to do? You didn't trust me enough to tell me. Don't you know that we monkeys, we usually keep our hearts somewhere else? You see that tree you used to meet me? That is where I kept my heart now. And the shark said, He said, just take me back home. Let me collect my heart. I will come back. And the shark, oh, okay. So to the amazement of everybody, the shark turned back and took the monkey back home. Now, our elders say, if God had not been the friend of the faithful ones and made them wise, even in the valley of death, life would have been extinct in the world. So, our monkey got home, got up to the tree, and told the shark that, you are a bad friend. Who told you? My heart is here with me. But thank God I escaped from you. And that was how the monkey got saved. My father told me that story many, many years ago, and I never forgot it, because he said that every parent should teach the child or their children how to be faithful to their friends. When you are faithful to your friends, somehow, when they try to plot evil or anything bad against you, somehow you have a means of escaping. It may not be the case all the time, but posterity would hold it dear in its heart, knowing that you have been faithful to your friends. That story is a story we should share every time, because every day it seems as if things are getting worse. People don't trust each other anymore. Whose fault? Now, for our thoughts for the week. Are you a good friend? Or are you a friend who is deliberately leading other friends into evil traps just because you want to make your own ends meet? Are you teaching your children to be faithful to their friends, but at the same time to be very, very wise? Think on these things till we meet again next time. Take care of yourselves, my friend. My name is Cordelia Obe. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.